INWs. This is the video that supports the currency conversions booklet, and we really have, it's kind of short, so it's not too bad. We really have two things to think about. Right now, currently, 1 Canadian dollar, right, is equal to 70 cents US, or thereabouts. It does fluctuate from time to time, but we're going to use this for our video. In the booklet, you wind up using 0.72 as the rate. And there was a time, not too long ago, but maybe 10 years ago, not even, when the Canadian dollar was worth more than the US dollar. So it would be like, $1.10 US would equal $1 Canadian. So what I want to do is I want to look at doing some currency conversions, doing some examples. It's ratio work, so this ties into the algebra that we're dealing with ratios. And, and then we'll talk a little bit about why there's a difference. Why are there different currency prices? Why can't we all have just one currency? And stuff like that. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But you don't have to worry about knowing any of these details. This is just an idea that comes about under the study of economics. And so we'll talk a little bit about that, giving you an appreciation why there are different currencies, and that will take us to the end of the lesson. So let's get started with a couple examples, okay? Okay, so let's say you're down shopping in the United States, down Bellingham or something like that, and you're getting some good, you want to get some good deals, and you see something that's cost 63 US dollars. So you want to figure out what that's like in Canadian dollars. Now, yeah, there are apps and stuff like that, but let's say you're in the store, and the salesman's there, and you don't want to make it look like you're trying to bargain or anything like that, or you don't want to be rude. So it's nice to be able to do this kind of stuff in your head, and you don't have to pull out your calculator and do that thing, right? And you look totally uncool, right? This, being able to do math in your head makes you able to do smart decisions and look cool doing it. That's why math is the way it is. So let's see if we can do this calculation, slow, and gives you some tools to make it quick so that you can look cool when you're doing your decision making. Because who doesn't want to look cool sometimes? Okay, so let's have a look. So as with all ratio work, the easiest and most efficient way to do this is by doing a ratio equation. So remember ratio equations. Use letters, and the letters have to be in the same order. So let's set that up, and then let's plug in what we know. So I want to set up the ratio of US to Canadian and US to Canadian. And then I got to fill in what I know. Well, I know that 1 Canadian dollar is the same as, in this case, in our example, 70 US cents. So I'll write that out as my ratio, and then I fill in the other part over here that comes from this information up here. Right? And so that's where we find our X and all that. Right, so 70 cents, 0.7. To 1, I guess these should be like little dots, they look like equal signs here, but 0.7 to 1, right, that's the ratio. 70 US cents is 1 Canadian dollar for our example. And so what does that mean for 63 US dollars? Is it going to be more, or is it going to be less? There's some intuitive ways to think about it, but let's just talk about getting the answers, right, and being able to make decisions when you have your answers instead of trying to do some guesswork. So, okay, so remember ratio equations, they become fractions, and then we wind up solving. So let's see. Okay, so remember when you write out your fractions, right? The first one goes on top, and the second one goes below, right? So over here, 63 on top, and then X down below, right? And now we solve. Now, you have to ask yourself, do you flip or not? Yeah. You gotta flip X's on the bottom, right? So you flip them both. Remember to flip both. Don't just flip one. Flip both, and then X will be on the top of the fraction, and you can solve from there. Right, so I'm writing everything out in super slow motion here, but times both sides by 63. So over here, the 63's will cancel, and leaving you just with X, and then I gotta calculate this guy over here. So let's have a look. Okay, so there's how the cancellation works. Okay, so you wind up getting 63 divided by 0.7. You do that on your calculator, you get 90. That's right, 90. 90 what? I can't remember. 90. What are we looking for up here? I think it's 63 US dollars is 90 Canadian dollars. So don't forget to remember what you're actually solving for, right? 90 Canadian. Yeah, 90 Canadian dollars. Bada bing, bada boom. Okay, so let's have a look at another currency where maybe it's not so intuitive. So many Canadians, you know, we like to vacation warm spots over the summer, or sorry, over the winter, and maybe into spring break and all that. So you're often going to Mexico or Cuba or Jamaica or Hawaii or even down in the United States, but let's think about Mexico, right? Let's say you travel to Puerto Vallarta, you got, you know, you have a budget of $43 for a particular gift item, say, a souvenir shop, and you're traveling and you want to figure out how many pesos that is. So this is what you're trying to think about. Let's have a look at how this plays out. Okay, set up the ratio equation, bada bing, bada boom, turn them into fractions. Okay, make sure that your letters are the same order, so CA to P, Canadian dollars to pesos, Canadian dollars to pesos. And then the first number goes on top, the second number goes below, first number on top, the second one below. Right, so that's what it looks like over here. Again, X is on the bottom, so you gotta flip. Let's see if we can solve this. Okay, so I flip, and then I realize X is on top, divided by 43, so you times by 43. I write it as 43 over 1, just to make it easy to see how the fractions play. And then, of course, the 43's cancel, and you're just left with X, and you calculate it out. Okay, so it winds up being like 559, or close to 560 in terms of pesos. And so that's how much you have to spend on whatever you want to do. So you have to be able to convert to and from Canadian dollars. Let's have a look at one more example where we're converting from Mexican pesos to American dollars, and it requires 2 steps. So let's have a look at that. So here are our 2 exchange rates, 70 cents or 0.7 US dollars, 1 Canadian dollar, and 1 Canadian dollar is equal to 13 pesos. So there's a couple ways to do this, and I'm just going to go through the slow motion route, and if you know faster ways, better ways to do it, then just use them. So first of all, we got to figure out how much 780 pesos is in Canadian dollars. So let's start there. Okay, so I set up the ratio, right? 1 Canadian dollar is 13 pesos, so X Canadian dollars is 780 pesos, and I convert that to fractions. Do I need to flip? No, X is already on top, so I just times by 780 to both sides and see what we get. Okay, so I wind up calculating 780 divided by 13 gets me 60 Canadian dollars. So I figured out how much Canadian money that is, and now I have to convert that to American money. So I got to do a second equation with the second ratio thing and all that sort of stuff. Now there are faster ways to do this, of course, but this will always do, if you think this way, you won't get it wrong. But it might take you a little bit of time to get it right. And I'll leave it to you to execute some of your more efficient techniques in the booklet, because the faster you are, the quicker you get it done, the less math you have to do. I get it. Okay, so there's the ratio equation over there. 70 cents to 1 Canadian dollars is X US dollars to 60 Canadian dollars. Set up the ratio, make sure the letters are in the same order. Okay, now we convert to fractions and solve. Okay, X is on top, so just times by the bottom number both sides, the 60s will cancel. Okay, so I calculated out, 60 times 0.7 is 42. So you're like, $42, yeah! Is that 42 Canadian dollars, 42 American dollars? Which kind of dollars is it? Well, you got to go back to the original question. How much is 780 pesos in US dollars? So here down at the bottom, right, we've calculated our US dollars. Remember, US is what we're looking for. That's our X. There's our X, and we know that it's $42, so that's 42 US dollars. So 780 pesos is the same as 42 US dollars. Okay, there's your math. You have to basically do 2 separate equations, one into Canadian and then one out of Canadian. There are other faster ways, and I could sit here and go through probably 10 different methods. But I want to get you to be able to do one and let you explore any other ways that you want to do faster ones if you wish. And that's your job if you wish to be more efficient. Right? So let's talk a little bit about why there are different types of currencies and why there are different prices. So not every country has a different currency. If you think about the European Union, for example, right? The euro is common all through Europe, or pretty much all through Europe. There's a couple of places that don't have the euro. But like Italy uses the euro, France, Germany, Spain, Holland, Belgium. There's a bunch of places. And they all have the same currency. And before that, they didn't have the same currency. They had the Italian lira, and the German mark, and the French franc, and the Dutch guilder, I think is what it was. Everyone had their own currency. And that's because currencies are made, like dollars and francs and euros and all that, they're printed by something called a central bank. Every country, every currency has a central bank. So there's a central bank for Canada, because we have our own currency. There's a central bank in the United States called the Federal Reserve, and they print American money. There's a central bank for the European Union that's in Brussels, and they print out euros. And countries want to control how much money they print. Think about this. If there's only one house available and everybody has $1, then that house isn't going to cost very much in terms of $1 because it's all anybody can afford. But if there's only one house available and everybody has $1 million, then that house is going to cost a lot of money relative to the amount of money that's out there. They call that the money supply. And the more money there is in a country, in what we call an economy, that's how much those goods are relative to each other. So in Canada, we have the prices. We have more money, more dollars in our economy in our country than the Americans do per person, because our price for things are less. So even though we have more money, our costs of things are higher, right? If you go down to the United States, you'll see that milk is cheaper, that gas is cheaper, but they don't make as much dollars because they have less dollars in their economy, right? So they know that as let's say a teacher makes $50,000 in Canada, they might make $40,000 in the United States. But then goods are cheaper in the United States. So it's relative to how much they make and the prices of goods there are. And if you remember your history, maybe, you've probably heard about something called inflation. And inflation is what happens is when there's too much money in a country, and those prices shoot through the roof. And we see that now in places like Venezuela and Zimbabwe. We saw that you probably heard about it in your history classes, with Germany and the hyperinflation of the 1920s after the First World War, one of the causes of the Second World War. And why that's a problem is because people wind up spending too much time worrying about their money. Because one day you might have 100, German marks, and it might buy you, 10 loaves of bread. And then the next day, that same 100 German marks will only buy you 8 loaves of bread. And then the next day, maybe only 6. And so you wind up worrying about your money so much, like, I gotta make sure I buy that bread today because I can get 10 of those loaves instead of 6 of them a couple days later. And you're always worried about how much your money is worth. And that worry, that time taken by an individual to keep up with that inflation, the rising costs of goods, is time out of their productive lives, right? That's time away from their families, time away from their jobs, time away from a whole bunch of things. So countries worry about that. And so each country has different levels of tolerance for inflation. And that's mirrored by how their banks print money. For Canada, we can tolerate a little bit more inflation, and so we print a little bit more money. Our goods are more expensive. That's how it is. But in the United States, they're really opposed to that, so they don't print as much money, and their goods are less expensive, but they don't make as much money. So it kind of all works out. Except in a situation like we have right now, where we have this COVID-19, and all the governments are printing money like crazy. And that's because they need that money to pay for the health care and the expensiveness of the goods that they need for all the medicines that are coming in that they need to get made. So printing money, and you're going to see inflation. But they're smarter now than they were 100 years ago. 100 years ago, they just printed money and put it in people's pockets, and that's why the price of goods rose. Now they print money and they give it to the banks, and the banks dole it out. And those banks dole it out so that it helps reduce the inflation. They keep some of it hidden, and they're the ones that are responsible for getting that money out. So anyways, that's a little bit of a story about why there's different currencies, why some are worth more than others, why some go up and some go down. And that goes way back into the ancient Rome and Egypt and Greece, stuff like that, when they made money out of gold and silver. And one of the ways that they used to cheat was they'd have a gold coin and then they'd melt it down and throw some silver and some iron in there, and they'd print a whole bunch more, and they might have 100 pounds of gold, but they put in 20 pounds of silver, and now they can they have much more coins to distribute. And that's a devaluation of their currency. So when you see inflation, it means that the currency is devalued. And if you're really interested, that's the idea of economics, and I encourage you to study those things when you get the opportunity if you go to college or whatever. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to leave you guys to get your work done. This is the booklet that so this video supports. The key is in the back. It's a little bit different than the other ones. There's no joke pages, but the work's pretty simple. And like I said, if you find some neat little tricks along the way, use them. That's what math class is for you to develop your own tricks. I can show you slow motion. You speed it up how you need to. Alright guys, take care.